just missed the gavel. Hi, how are you? Oh my God. Sorry. Can't hear.
One, I'm half deaf to start off with, and I'm just getting over a cold. So if people are going to speak, please speak up. Two, if I'm not speaking loud enough, let me know. I'm representative.
You need a mic. Where's the mic? Put some mic on.
I'm Representative Knott from the House Chair, Senator Warren, the Senate Chair. Two, elected officials. We're good, but it's a crowded room, so we're going to ask you to sign in as well, and I'm going to further address the testimony of elected officials. Thank you.
Grabbing my lens. Right.
AC was asked about.
Yep, that one.
This is it.
Got it. Thank you.
Glenn, I don't
The
have
building, we're restricted due to construction going on in other parts of the building. That's why we had it here. That's why we're having this on Friday. Because of access.
Right down.
So, bear with us another few minutes. We're going to try this, leaving the doors open. Try. But if there's too much noise coming out in the hallway, not for our benefit, but for the benefit of the people testifying, we want the committee members to be able to hear this. And I gotta say, I really wish, I don't like my committee members down there being cut off. That problem there, you're gonna have to push something.
Yeah, it's Girls and Silver, right?
Yeah. I just make sure you want to. I don't think anyone put up. I'm glad you did.
I just played the next one.
Bear with us, too.
It should have been. Get downstairs and plug in. Yep. Down there.
Fortunately, they're running.
They have outlets up for the chamber.
Yeah, it's like
I don't use this.
We have the daisy chain.
piggyback. Yeah. It's relaxed the eye.
The base stage
We don't do a news.
That's how it works.
Thank you for doing that. Everything after all this
POTUS to tweet about it today.
There's no sound.
Doing the best we can. Get going. I'm going to ask everyone to rise and say the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. Preliminarily, it's some housekeeping. As you can see, it's a crowded room, it's hot. We're asking for everyone to be patient, be courteous, and be conscious of each other's right to speak, right to have divergent opinions, and right to express those opinions. We anticipate no disruption today. We anticipate everyone being respectful, but we do have some tremendous court officers and some great staff that have been working hard since early this morning and all week setting up this hearing. I ask you to be respectful to them as well. They work very hard, and they're doing as well, doing a tremendous job. Secondly, we do anticipate, as you can tell, this to be a long day. We will get to everyone. We will be here as long as there is someone who wants to articulate their opinion on what we know are some very deep and heartfelt convictions and feelings on both sides of this issue. I know it well. I was deployed with the U.S. Army 2 years ago in the Middle East and advising in the Syria mission. I saw the refugee crisis firsthand. I saw 2 million people moving as one through Turkey into the Piraeus, up into Greece, and into Southern Europe. By the same token, through my experience as a soldier, as a prosecutor, as chairman of this committee for the last 6 years, we've also seen the marathon bombing. We've seen dangerous people that are coming to this country under the auspices of needing help. So we understand how significant this issue is and what an impact it is having and will continue to have on the lives of many residents of this Commonwealth. Here for a long time, and others here for a short period, many of whom we know are simply looking for a better life for them and their children. Before I go any further, and before I announce a few other housekeeping matters and introduce the House members, I'd like to introduce my Senate co-chair, Senator Mike Moore, for a few comments and to introduce the Senate members.
Good morning. I just want to thank everyone for coming this morning to testify and expressing your opinion. As the Chairman Norton stated, I'm just going to ask that we all have respect for each other's opinions and not to express the cheering, the booing, or any sort of remarks. As you can see, this room is filled to capacity. It's a very intimidating process for people to get up and speak before committees and in front of 400 people. If they've never done this before, and even if they have done this before. So all we are asking for is respect for each other in this process, and hopefully we'll get through this hearing efficiently, and everyone will be able to express their opinion. Thank you very much for coming today.
Thank you, Senator.
We have Senator with me today is Senator Williams Brownsberger, and we have Senator Sunshine Diaz, who is going to be joining the first panel that's going to be speaking. They're also members of this committee. And back to you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Introducing the House members to my right, Representative Jim Dwyer, Representative Dave Moradian, Representative Bruce Ayers. To my left, the Vice Chair, Alan Sylvia, Representative Pete Durant, Representative David Vieira, Representative Paul Tucker, Representative Thomas Walsh, Representative China Phillips, and Representative Roddy Mott. Thank you. Thank you, House members, for coming in here today. Again, a couple more housekeeping matters. We are going to start off with a panel of the proponents of this legislation. I believe there are 2 or 3 of them testifying. There will be a number of other legislators standing with them in solidarity. It is the tradition of this body to take legislators and electeds out of turn, and we will observe that tradition today to a certain extent. But with a great number of members of the general public, interest groups, and panels that want to testify, eventually we will start alternating between electeds and members of the general public. Again, with no disrespect, we good. There may be some electeds in the room. They could be local electeds that we are not from our district, so we don't know them, or we just may miss them in the crowd. Please make yourself known to the committee staff. There's Megan here, there's Noah down the end there, and then there's other staff outside. If an elected wants to testify with a panel, we are going to ask that if we take you out of turn, you do not bring the panel up. You wait to testify with that panel, and the exception is the first group that's going to come up. We're going to ask you to, if you want to testify with the panel, then we're going to ask you to wait until that panel comes up in the order in which they signed up. And that's just being fair to a lot of people from the general public that have traveled from around the state to be here today. Also, probably most important, especially for some of the electeds, is the 3-minute rule. As a trial lawyer, I know you lose a jury after 5 minutes. In this setting, you lose us a lot quicker than that. We ask you, and joking aside, the 3-minute rule is for all of you. I mean, if we have to stay here till 10 o'clock tonight, we'll stay here till 10 o'clock tonight. But I don't think we need to ask you people to all stay here till 10 o'clock tonight. So if we can get through it, please observe the 3-minute rule. You will hear a buzzer at the end of the 3 minutes and for every 30 seconds thereafter. Also, again, knowing that there are some very strong feelings in this crowd, if you clap and hooray or boo on the other end, you are taking time away from that speaker, because we're not going to give you credit for the time that we can't hear the speaker when you're applauding. We would ask proponents of the legislation, Senator Eldridge and Representative Matias, to come up. Bring your group and introduce, or have them introduce themselves, and then Rep. Decker, are you testifying? Okay. Close.
Good morning. I'm State Senator Jamie Eldridge, and I want to thank Chairman Naughton, Chairman Gore, and the Joint Committee on Public Safety and Homeland Security for taking us out of turn and hearing the Safe Communities Act and dedicating this entire day, this entire committee hearing to this legislation. I want to emphasize that I really think this is an important moment in state's history. This is a civil rights bill. This is a bill that, when I think back to other votes and other issues I take on, I think back to some of the first votes I took on as a freshman state representative on same-sex marriage. So I think this is a civil rights issue. I also want to emphasize that this is, as Chairman Naughton knows, this is not the first time this bill has been heard by this committee. This bill, in an earlier version, was known as the Trust Act. This is the 3rd term this has been filed. This bill has some added versions, but I want to emphasize this is a bill that has gone through this committee a number of times, been reviewed, sometimes reported out, sometimes not. And I also want to emphasize, before I give my written remarks, is that this is real in Massachusetts. Deportations are happening in Massachusetts. It's not just other parts of the country. And Muslim Americans are being profiled in Massachusetts. It's not just in other parts of the country. So when you consider the Safe Communities Act, I ask you to consider and think about the families that are being ripped apart, about the families that are being profiled, the this is something that's happening in Massachusetts, and I would argue is deeply opposite to Massachusetts values. Throughout our Commonwealth's history, immigrants have enriched the culture, economy, and social fabric of Massachusetts. Immigrants continue to be crucial to the Massachusetts economy. They constitute more than 20% of the labor force in 18 industries and are essential to the Commonwealth's workforce as researchers. President Trump's broad immigration policies, however, threaten the vitality of our economy. After speaking to small business owners, as well as CEOs of larger corporations, I can tell you that Trump's executive orders make all immigrants feel unsafe and unwanted in the United States and in every state that is complicit in its immigration enforcement. And it's important to emphasize what has changed. Under President Obama, there were deportations, but under President Trump's executive orders, virtually every single undocumented immigrant, including those who have not broken the law, are considered priorities for deportations. In January of this year, ICE agents have been targeting courthouses, places of worship, shelters, and schools to indiscriminately identify and detain immigrants in our communities. ICE arrests of non-criminal immigrants, again, undocumented immigrants who have not broken the law in New England, have more than tripled on President Trump. Very quickly, what this bill would do, it would ensure that Massachusetts police resources are used to fight crime, not assist in federal immigration enforcement. It would prohibit state support for any Muslim registry or any other registry based on religion, ethnicity, or national origin. It would prohibit collaboration agreements between sheriffs and ICE agents. It would ensure due process rights for immigrants who are detained in state and local facilities. And I want to conclude and say that it's really critical to make the connection, and many police chiefs will do this today, is that by allowing ICE agents, federal immigration officials, to collaborate with local and state law enforcement is making our communities less safe. We have statistics that so-called sanctuary cities and towns have lower crime rates than non-sanctuary cities or towns. That if you send a message to immigrant communities that local and state law enforcement are complicit or involved in deportations, immigrant communities are much less likely to talk to police, to reach out to the police chief, to have that trust, to report crime in their communities and their neighborhoods. So when you're talking about whether this is a public safety bill, as the title of the bill suggests, this is also a bill to protect people's public safety. And you will see sheriffs today, you will see police chiefs, you will see other law enforcement speak out in support of this legislation and highlight that public safety element. Again, thank you for taking me out of turn, and I want to thank all my colleagues who are standing here behind me who will introduce themselves after Representative Matias's testimony.
Good morning, honorable members of the Joint Committee on Public Safety and Homeland Security. My name is Juana Matias. I am the state representative for the 16th Essex District. I'd like to thank Chairman Naughton and Chairman Moore for this opportunity, and thank the rest of the committee for the opportunity to testify on behalf of the Safe Communities Act, an act to protect the civil rights and safety of all Massachusetts residents. Since the implementation of Trump's aggressive immigration agenda, arrests of non-criminal immigrants, as my colleague said, people who have never had an encounter with law enforcement in New England, has tripled, disproving any claim that the administration is only going after criminal immigrants. Our communities have been horribly disrupted. We have heard from hundreds of community partners, some of which you will hear from today, across the state of the fear and trepidation that immigrant families are facing and living with. The Safe Communities Act provides the state of Massachusetts with an opportunity to restore trust in our institutions. Local law enforcement agencies get their authority to make arrests under Chapter 41 of Mass General Laws. The Safe Communities Act, in no way, shape, or form, limits the ability or capacity of our law enforcement officials to investigate or prosecute crime. For those that say this legislation and others like it prevent law enforcement from effectively addressing crime, I would like to point to the example of the operation that took place in the city of Lawrence 2 weeks ago. The city of Lawrence enacted a Trust Act ordinance in 2015. However, our local law police department just recently collaborated with ICE and other federal enforcement agents for over a year to bring down a drug operation network. The Lawrence Trust Act in no way limited our law enforcement agencies' ability to conduct their investigation. In contrast, our immigrant community members, both documented and undocumented, provided critical information and served as witnesses in the development and execution of that investigation. This bill is aligned with good policing practices. Our office has worked very closely with Brian Kais, Chief of the Chelsea Police Department, and other law enforcement colleagues to ensure that the legislation is comprehensive and presents the best practices, and our police need residents to trust them. Only then will people feel safe enough to come forward, report crimes, and help with investigations. The Safe Communities Act upholds the Constitution and conforms to both state and federal law. No provision within the Safe Communities Act prevents ICE from conducting their federal immigration enforcement. In contrast, the legislation is in full compliance with USC 8, Section 1373, and USC 8, Section 1324. It is important to clarify that law enforcement agencies have no legal obligation to engage in federal immigration enforcement. And often when they find themselves doing so, they are legally liable. We should not divert state resources or local resources to do the work of the federal government. Moreover, a string of federal cases have ruled that detainer-based immigration detentions violate the Fourth Amendment. We currently have the Lund versus Commonwealth case pending before the SJC, which is based on the legality of these detentions. In conclusion, there has always been a long tradition in Massachusetts to stand up for what is right, to uphold our values, and to lead on critical issues. Massachusetts, in my humble opinion, has the responsibility, as it has done on many occasions in the past, to starkly distinguish itself and demonstrate that we are not a place where fear will prevail, and that we stand firmly committed to ensuring equal treatment and due process for all. Thank you for your attention. Again, I respectfully request that the committee favorably report this legislation out of committee, and I profoundly thank my colleagues who are behind me in solidarity behind this legislation, and everyone who is present today.
And since you might as well start, since you brought it up, the Lund case, what are the ramifications of the SJC goes either way on that?
Well, what we've seen in other federal federal court cases is that they're saying that when
This is a state court case.
Yeah, this is a state court case, but it's a federal issue. So when you're holding someone, someone's been detained for committing a crime under state law, and their time is up, they've complied with their bail, or they've complied with the time that's been prescribed to that crime, and you continue to hold them, that is a second arrest. And when you're arresting someone, you need probable cause to show that that person's violated a crime. And these detainers that our sheriff's departments receive are not based on probable cause. They're not being determined by an impartial magistrate or judge. So we should not be having our law enforcement agents arresting someone when we have no proof that that person has violated some statute.
Any questions from the panel?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just have a couple of questions. I'm wondering, first of all, Senator, you had mentioned that there were 20% of the people in Massachusetts who were immigrants. I guess I'm first, I'm just trying to understand what constitutes in your mind, or in this legislation's mind, what would be an immigrant who is here legally versus somebody who is here illegally? What constitutes somebody being here and breaking the law?
So usually you have someone who's documented and who's undocumented. When someone's documented, there's different ways to be documented. You could be a permanent resident, you can be someone who has TPS, someone who has DACA. So there's various different petitions that can be filed in forms of statuses. So there is a way to distinguish whether someone is documented or undocumented.
Okay, so by that definition, if somebody who's here, so somebody who overstays their visa, They're here, they're allowed to come into the country for X period of time. They've overstayed their visa, or they've crossed the border, the southern border, for example, without going through customs. Would that be considered a crime?
It's a civil violation, so someone who is undocumented, unauthorized, it's a federal civil violation, and the point that we're making is that undocumented immigrants, approximately 11 million people in the United States, that under President Trump's executive order, the priority is to deport all of those families and all those individuals. That is not only unrealistic, but deeply unfair. And what this bill is trying to do is allow local law and state law enforcement to focus or allow undocumented immigrants who are violent criminals or committed crimes. That should be the priority.
Okay.
But not those who are hardworking and are giving back to their community.
And I don't disagree with you. So, but I'm just trying to get to the crux of it. So the 20% that are in Massachusetts, clearly, do we know the percentage that would be here who have committed the crime of overstaying their visa or coming into the country without passing through customs? We know what that percentage would be roughly.
Yes, so just to be clear, Representative, the 20% statistic is 20% of all Massachusetts residents are foreign born, okay? The vast majority of which are undocumented. It's estimated there are approximately 100,000 undocumented immigrants in Massachusetts. So a very small percent.
Oh, okay, so I thought you said the vast majority were undocumented. So it's a very small percentage that are here illegally.
But the vast majority are legal.
Okay. And so, what, I mean, again, I don't know if we know that percentage. Do we know that percentage? Is it 5%? Is it 1%? Is it 2% of those 20%? Do we have any idea?
It would be $100,000 of, 100,000 residents of approximately, 800,000, 900,000.
So we mentioned that the current president's orders basically strip the priorities from those who are here illegally, right? So now we're just going after everybody who's here illegally. Again, so I don't want to focus on those people who have green cards, those people who are in the country legally, who have gone through the process. I'm focusing on those who have either overstayed a visa or have come here without going through customs. So of those people, we're saying that President Trump's order has expanded to where everybody could be rounded up, theoretically. Right? We're not going to round up everybody, but theoretically, everybody could be rounded up.
It actually has been happening. So we can attest to people who have been arrested who have no criminal convictions, who have never even stepped into a police department, who are being taken away from their families. And one of the things that we need to keep in mind is that we have what's called mixed status families. So we have a dad who's undocumented, married to a mother who's a permanent resident, having children who are U.S. citizens. And what you're doing is breaking up these families. And the family structure is the most important thing to maintain a family moving forward. And it also helps our economies in the state.
And I'm assuming, actually, when you used the term that there were 3 times more people being reported who were non-criminals, you may or may not, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but you may be referring to an article that was put out by NPR recently that highlighted these kinds of instances. Would that be fair to say?
Yes, that's correct.
But in that article, actually, the article does state that in this particular instance, they're talking about a Brazilian national who was deported, or at least was detained. In this client, a Brazilian national who had been ordered deported before she was deported. So my question is, this is a person who had already had a deportation order, for which we do not know. And my question is, how many of these people who are non-criminals have deportation orders already?
That's a very convoluted issue because you can have a deportation order, a prior deportation order, because you failed to show up to a court appointment that you weren't aware of. So I had one of those constituents who called my office who was detained by ICE, and because she had a prior deportation order, failed to show up to a Boston Immigration Court appointment, wasn't aware of it due to circumstances of life. And she was ordered deported. But this person had been working in our communities for 14 years. She was a taxpayer. She had her child here who's a U.S. citizen, had never had any criminal convictions. So it's convoluted. It's a circumstance by circumstance.
So it's your contention, though, that just because you have a deportation order doesn't mean you should be deported? It means, I guess I'm trying to get to the legality of a deportation order. Are we just going to ignore those deportation orders?
Well, that person in that case had some form of relief. Some of these people most of them have some form of relief if they just had access to an attorney. She was actually eligible for asylum, and she is currently petitioning before the Boston Immigration Court for asylum, and she would be able to stay here with her son, who is 21 years old, who is a U.S. citizen, who has been raised here, and there is no need for us to use our local law enforcement to divide families.
Okay. And so my next question is you're obviously, I'm sure you're aware, I shouldn't assume, but I'm sure you're aware of the two executive orders issued by President Obama in 2012 and 2014, which basically prioritize those immigrants who should be deported, or at least not made a priority, I guess is the way I'd say it, being those who are children, the so-called what we call dreamers, and their families, correct?
Yes, sir, Representative, as I stated earlier, this bill's been filed for over 4 years, in part because the enforcement of that was still being unfairly applied, and the majority of undocumented immigrants being deported under President Obama, sadly, also have not committed crimes.
So, and then we're familiar with the executive order that was issued by President Obama and, President Trump, in late February or so, where he kind of stripped some of these priorities, correct? And so that's kind of one of the issues that we have, right? When we say we're rounding up all of these people, it's because of President Trump's executive order saying hey, we're stripping all these priorities up.
That's correct.
Okay. Are you aware that within DHS's own guidance for that particular executive order, it says with the exception of the June 15, 2012 memorandum entitled emphasizing prosecutorial discretion with respect to individuals who came to the United States as children, and the November 20th, 2014 memorandum entitled exercising prosecutorial discretion with respect to individuals who came to the United States as children, and with respect to certain individuals who are parents of children or permanent residents, all existing conflicting memorandum and field guidance regarding the enforcement of immigration laws, et cetera, is immediately rescinded. So doesn't President Trump's executive order, he exempts the two executive orders that President Obama did. So we're really not going after just any old undocumented immigrant.
Representative, I strongly disagree because the statistics showing that the number of non-criminal undocumented immigrants who were reported in New England has tripled in the past year. But Representative, if I may say, you're talking about President Trump's immigration policies. This bill is just stating that there shall not be collaboration between local and state police with undocumented immigrants unless there is probable cause or they have caused or likely to cause a violent crime. We're talking about a state bill. We're not talking about President Trump's policies. And ultimately, ICE agents can still do whatever they want. We're just stating that state and local law enforcement should not be collaborating or cooperating unless it's appropriate.
Well, I appreciate that, but actually in your statements, you opened with saying that we were fighting against President Trump's executive orders in his broad reach. So we really are kind of broadening this up. We may only be able to affect the state and state laws, but really, for your statements that you just started with, it was we're trying to fight against his unjust actions.
So you're asking questions about President Trump's executive orders. Our focus is on what the limitations can be between local law enforcement. That's why this is the third time this was filed.
Okay. So, are you familiar with, again, so let's get back to the question of when is it that somebody here in the country illegally should be deported? I mean, clearly, if you received a detainer that said, or let's say, let me go through the scenario. So
That's for the Boston Immigration Court to determine when someone should be deported or not. There are federal provisions that say what you need to meet to be eligible for asylum, what you need to meet to be eligible for cancellation of removal. That's for the Boston Immigration Court to determine. That's federal law, and we're saying that the federal government should do their job and the state resources should be used for state resources.
I understand that, but this is an interaction between these two organizations. So let me ask you this.
Representative, we're not going to comment on federal immigration policy, so our focus is on helping the safety community.
Okay. So let me ask you this question: If I was a police officer, I'm a local police chief, and I've arrested someone. I've arrested John Smith, and I put his fingerprints through the federal system there that checks on his fingerprints. And it comes back that the police, this particular person is wanted for questioning in regards to a homicide that took place. he hasn't got an arrest warrant, but he's a person of interest and we really want to talk to him. Would it seem reasonable that that person, that the police department should say, okay, we have him, hang on, we have somebody that wants to speak? Is this a reasonable request?
Yes, the bill allows that.
Okay.
The bill allows that, and it depends what you arrested them for. What was the underlying crime?
So now that same police chief has received a 247N form saying that this person is, we think that this person has a detainer order or he is wanted in questioning for, he hasn't been convicted, but he's wanted in questioning for a possible crime. Should they contact ICE?
Has a person been released on bond, on bail? You've arrested the person was brought through your docking process, have they been released on bail?
So typically what happens,
It depends on the underlying crime.
Hold on. And what happens typically, because I talked to my chiefs about this, so when they run somebody's fingerprints, it's whether a 247N, and I understand they're not always using that form anymore, especially under President Trump, but if a 247N form came in or some other form came in saying we'd like to speak to this person, then and I get the term wrong, but the magistrate in charge of bail would say, hold on, we're not issuing bail at this time. Even if I got pulled over or somebody got pulled over for drunk driving, something is, I don't want to say as simple or as innocuous, but somebody gets pulled over for drunk driving, the typical process is that I run their fingerprints and I call the bailiff and I say, hey, I got a guy here, he was pinched for drunk driving and he's going to be arraigned tomorrow morning. The bailiff says, okay, it's $40, send him home and we'll see him tomorrow in court. But if all of a sudden it comes back that that person is wanted for questioning, the bailiff can say, hold on, we're going to hold off on bail until this person gets questioned because he's wanted. So in that particular instance, it's possible for that police chief to say, well, now I have a 247N form. What should I do? Should I contact ICE or not?
So we are going to let the police panel that's here today in support of the State Communities Act answer that question for you because they have a breadth of knowledge and they're the ones that do the day in, day out of this work, and they'll be able to clearly answer that question to you as to what they think the best practices are as police chiefs and people who've been working in law enforcement for years.
But doesn't this bill address that? Doesn't the bill
This bill clearly allows.
Doesn't this bill say that there are not, that local police agencies or the sheriff's agency is not allowed to then call ICE or detain this person because ICE wants to speak with them? And my question is if it's good for the goose, isn't it good for the gander? If this person is wanted for a question for kidnapping of some other, it's just questioning, then we would do that. But maybe we would not do that here, according to what I understand in this bill.
Because the bill has a category of crimes that are talk about certain violent crimes and certain aggressive crimes, whereas police could continue to detain someone at ICE's request. So we do feel it's a balanced bill.
Could you point me that where that might say that? I'm just trying to understand that. Representative Vieira says it's line 67.
Yes, so page of the bill, page 6, lines 59 through 7. And like any bill, and this bill has changed in the past, we're happy to meet with the committee and talk with the committee and meet with the chairman if there are appropriate changes to that bill. But it was important to draw a bright line to make sure that someone who was, say, pulled over for a speeding violation is being unfairly held compared to how U.S. citizens.
And our office has been working with law enforcement because they've brought this to our attention and they have recommendations, and we're very willing to work with them so that we can make very clear what that procedure looks like. And like I said, we're going to have someone testify further on this matter.
But in Senator, with all due respect, that's the question, is if that person was simply pulled over for speeding, reckless driving, they were going 90 and a 55, and that's considered reckless driving, so we're going to just kind of bring you in. And we're allowed to check you out, and we're allowed to run your fingerprints. And that's the point. If somebody came back with a hit that said this person's wanted, or wanted for questioning, we don't even know if this person has anything to do with an armed robbery, but he's a person of interest and we want him for questioning. We would then hold that person until such time as they're able to be questioned. Whereas in this case, that doesn't seem to be the case. If ICE called and said, we would like to have this person for questioning, they would not be allowed to do that.
I think where you're maybe respectfully confusing things is that the police officer, if there was a concern about that person who committed a crime, probable cause continues and that person could be held for further questioning. But what we're trying to oppose, what we actually do for public safety, is having ICE get engaged in holding people unfairly or for deportation reasons that many of us feel is unreasonable. And that's the separation we're trying to create.
Okay, that's a good separation. So, but probable cause, by your standard, probable cause could be that they're in the country illegally.
No, that's where the difference comes in. So if a police officer arrests someone because they've committed or violated some criminal statute under mass statutory law, there is sufficient probable cause to hold that person and there is an arrest. And they can continue holding that person. But when it comes to whether the person entered the country here legally or not, that's not under mass statutory law. That is federal civil violation. And that's where we create the clear delineation that for criminal convictions, someone can be held, or for a criminal, because someone's committed a crime based on probable cause, they can be held, but not if the person, because how does that police officer know if that person's documented or not documented at the time of arrest?
Well, if ICE came back and said we have probable cause for this, so now you're saying that we're not going to collaborate with the feds on an issue that they may have. They may say you have probable cause to question this person in a terrorist act, but it's only probable cause. But we may not even know that, right? The 247N form may spell that out, but there's also a box that says, all other things that we may deem necessary. So what are we making the judgment here? Are we asking our law enforcement to make the judgment that if this is a federal issue, if this is a federal crime, that we're not going to collaborate with the feds and you can go and find them somewhere else?
What the law says, if the police officers arrest someone because they've committed a crime, the police officer is someone committing a crime, they have probable cause to believe that they committed the crime, they have all the legal authority under Mass General Law, Chapter 41, to arrest that person and detain that person. Now, if that person is being held detained and you receive a fingerprint request or a 247 agreement request, and that person's detained on probable cause because they've committed a violation of state law, police departments, police chiefs can continue moving forward. Now, if that person has been detained and he's gone to bail here and he's been released, and ICE wants to detain that person to have the legal authority to do so, that's not our law enforcement state agencies' jobs to do so.
But it's not federal. So my question is that if, and it goes back to my first question that I asked you, is when does it become a crime? Whether it's a misdemeanor, whether it's a civil infraction, when does it become a crime?
So if you look at Mass General Laws, Chapter 41, that's where police officers get the authority to make arrests. And what that section says is that police officers in the state of Massachusetts can make arrests when they have probable cause to believe that person has committed a crime. You cannot look at someone and know if they're an undocumented or documented person in the United States. So if ICE wants to question someone, there's not sufficient probable cause for that if the person wasn't arrested for committing a crime.
Okay, and so what we're saying then, and I guess we're just going back, and I don't want to go around first, Mr. Chairman, I appreciate your giving me some latitude. So basically, what we're saying that if we have probable cause that a state crime was committed, then I'm going to hold you. But if I have probable cause that you've committed a federal crime, or the feds have told me that they have probable cause that you've committed a federal crime, to that person.
No, that's not what we're saying. So first of all, our local police departments and our state police have very clear authority under Mass statutory law. And you can find that under Mass General Law, Chapter 41. That is to arrest someone who has committed felonies and certain misdemeanors if probable cause is evident. That's their authority. Now, if someone is being held because they committed a crime, a valid crime, and ICE calls, and that person is being held under an underlying crime, they can work together. Now, if that person is arrested and released on bail, and ICE calls us to hold them just to question them, That is not okay if that person is not detained because of an initial underlying crime. That is a clear distinction in our legislation.
Even if it was a separate federal agency that said, we would like this person, we have Timothy McVeigh in our custody, and we would like to question him regarding a bombing that may have occurred that he may be involved in. We would say, okay, we'll hold him for that, but we won't hold an immigrant.
Representative, I think I really want to make something clear. There are multiple federal law enforcement agencies, all of which get fingerprints and all of which interact with local state law enforcement. You seem to be thinking that ICE is in charge of investigating federal crimes. ICE is in charge of those who have violated immigration law, a civil violation. It's not the FBI, it's not the DEA, it's not the Office of Tobacco and Alcohol Control. So you seem to be conflating ICE with somehow being in charge of federal crimes when it is focused on those who are undocumented or their legal status.
Okay, and I appreciate that. And I'm not confusing the two. What I'm saying is there's a double standard. What I'm saying is that we would help the FBI, but we would not help ICE.
That's not a double standard. We're talking about crime, and respectfully, you seem to be suggesting that violating immigration law is a crime, and we would strongly disagree with that.
Would the federal government disagree with that?
It's a civil violation, not a criminal violation.
So would the federal government disagree?
Under federal law, yes, it's a civil violation.
So it is a violation.
A civil violation, not a criminal violation.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Representative Senator Moore. Very brief, Senator.
I'm willing to venture there's not a person on this committee who has, in the last year, not violated a civil statute here in Massachusetts.
However, Mr. Chairman, I would just say,
It's just one of my members.
Sure. Reps, you do want to?
well, I would say yes, absolutely. I may have overpassed the 65-mile-an-hour speed limit to get here. However, I also understood that there was a possibility that I would be pulled over, given a ticket, or if I went too fast, be arrested. And so I understand that. So it's not an issue of civil penalties are nothing really, and we all just do it. It's in knowing whether or not you're taking a risk and you're going to be penalized.
I would like Senator Eldridge to introduce members of the panel, and Senator Moore has some questions.
Carmen Gentile, Senator Jack Lewis, Senator Shane Diaz, Representative Sean Garbley, Representative Denise Garlick, and Representative Jonathan Hatton. Thank you very much.
Do you know how long it takes to go through the citizenship process right now?
Depends. A person, once they become a permanent resident, they have to be in the United States for 5 years, and then there's certain statutory requirements that you have to show that you're of good moral character, et cetera, and then they can petition for citizenship, and that's a process as well. So you at least need to wait 5 years.
So it's at least 5 years?
And you need to, no criminal convictions, there's a long process and a lot of statutory requirements. You file the petition, there's a fee related to it, and then you have an adjustment interview with USCIS.
Okay, right now with the current system, who makes the determination for the community whether local police interact with immigration, and do you know how many communities are actually interacting with immigration, INS?
It's unclear, Mr. Chairman, our experience in talking to a lot of police departments is that they already effectively follow this policy on their own, but there are certainly some police departments that are cooperating with ICE.
But who makes that determination? Is it the chief of police, is it the board of selectmen, city manager, mayors? Who makes that determination for the community?
So in our city, in the city of Lawrence, we have a trust act that was enacted in 2015. So our city council enacted this law, supported by the mayor. So every community, some communities, we have about 6 or 8 communities that have decided to put some form of a trust act ordinance in place. But we believe that we need this to be a state issue, because when you have a domestic violence victim walking into their police department to report a crime, she should not have to be thinking about, should I report this because it's going to have repercussions on me and my family and it being broken up, depending on what police department you're walking in. People should feel comfortable going into any police department in the state and reporting crime, and this bill allows for that.
So right now we don't have an idea of how many communities that are doing this, or if there's the only process right now would be local option or home rule or that type of process?
Exactly, which is the way we call it.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Representative Tucker. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We know there's a number of communities that have embraced what this bill contemplates. There are a number of communities that are vehemently opposed, and there are some communities like my own that I represent where this has been a very divisive issue. Now, having said that, we also know that sometimes bodies such as legislatures are criticized for top-down and foisting upon some communities laws and mandates that they do not want to participate in. I'd be interested in your comment on the observation that there should be a local opt-in, that the state could put a framework out, and that whatever form of government, whether it be city council, town meeting, representative meeting, that should be the mechanism to bring it to that community. I'd be interested in your comments on that.
Yeah, thank you, Representative, for your comments. I too feel very strongly that because this is a civil rights bill, it should have a statewide application. I would not have liked, while we were working on protecting same-sex marriage 10 years ago, for there to be a local opt-in. I would not have liked it in the last session we passed the transgender rights anti-discrimination law, that there would be a local opt-in. And the same applies to other protected categories in our Constitution. So we really think it's important to have a statewide application. Just as a small aside, is Governor Baker, I believe, has commented on that. Last session, I worked very closely with Governor Baker as the Chair of Financial Services to pass the Uber Lyft legislation, TNC, Transportation Network Companies. Governor Baker explicitly, in his bill, prohibited local regulation. It said it needed to be a statewide uniform standard. If that's going to be applied to transportation companies, I think it certainly should apply to human beings.
Representative Moore.
There's a few. But he has at times said that he would prefer this to be done community by community, and at times he has been stronger in his opposition to this bill. So I would say it's fair to say, I shouldn't speak for him, but I'd say it's fair.
Thank you. I appreciate the expertise at the table, and I just wanted to delve in a little bit into the information sharing part of this, make sure I understood. So I understand that when anybody's arrested, all their prints are shared with the FBI. So this bill does nowhere alters standard practice in the course of arrest. Those prints may flow to any number of federal agencies, including ICE. That process will not change. The arrest process does not change.
That's correct.
And could you, there was some emphasis on consistency with 8 U.S.C. 1373. Could you just fill that out for us a little bit?
So that section is a federal provision, and what it says is that states and localities are required to exchange citizenship information of people who live within their states. So if you see in the Safe Communities Act bill before you, we comply with that section of the federal law. And it's the only federal law requirement when it comes to immigration that localities, states, and organizations need to follow through with, and we're in full compliance of it.
Just for my education, explain a little bit more about what that section requires.
So if you're having federal agents contact your organization, a government agency, and they're asking you for someone's citizenship status, right? So citizenship status, we're not talking about other forms of status. They are required under that statute, 8 U.S.C. 1373, to interact with the government and provide the information that they're seeking.
So if someone is a prisoner, a question will be answered, are they a citizen? Not are they, if they're a citizen or not a citizen, but they may or may not have, if they're not a citizen, does not extend to immigration status.
Based on what that provision of that section of the law says is citizenship status. And I don't have it before me so that I could verify for you, but from what I recall is citizenship status.
Okay, well, I'd be interested in getting the full details.
And we're full compliance, so we make sure that if you see in the bill, we say that we need to make sure that we follow this and abide by that section of law.
No, you're clear in that, and I just am trying to understand it. So I'd be interested in more background on that. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll make sure we get that information to the committee.
Representative Moravia.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you to the panel, too, for being here, for presenting this very comprehensive bill and answering all sorts of questions regarding it. Thank you also to everyone for your time for sitting here. I'll try to make this very brief. I'm trying to read through, I believe in section 41, subsection 10, it does reference a serious violent felony. I am just wondering, for the drafters of the bill, if things like the trafficking of heroin, child pornography, things like that, possession of a machine gun, would constitute a serious violent felony.
Rep, thank you so much for your question. So your point is well taken. We are working with law enforcement agencies currently to delineate and specifically be able to include there what is going to be considered a serious felony. And we're willing to work with the committee to hear what your recommendations are so that we can make sure that this is comprehensive and that everyone feels comfortable with the bill before them.
Okay, right now it's not. Thank you, though. I'd like to circle back around at another point with respect to everyone's time, but thank you.
No, make your point. I mean, when they go, they go. You have another question? No. Did you have another question? Dave?
No, I'm also
Anyone else in the center of the panel? Down here. Sorry, just one more question.
I'm sorry. So, we brought up the issue of victims of crime being afraid to come forward, of being afraid of being arrested and being prosecuted. Are you familiar with the brochure put out by the Department of Homeland Security entitled Immigration Options for Victims of Crimes? In this particular, and I'm happy to give you a copy of this, but in this particular brochure, it outlines specifically that victims of crime should not be afraid to come forward because there actually are different visa statuses for those who are victims of crime. So people who are victims of crime really shouldn't have a problem coming forward at all, should they?
No.
In California, there was somebody who was the victim of domestic violence. She was going to court to get a protective order, and she was picked up by ICE and she was deported. So respectfully, I would say that you have a little too much faith in the Department of Homeland Security. You're being very aggressive.
We also had people who were in adjustment interviews in the Lawrence USCIS office, meaning that they had eligibility for relief and they were being detained during their interview for adjustment. So I think that although that's what that paper says, that's not the actions that the Department of Homeland Security is taking.
Representative, I have very little faith in the government, which is why I don't particularly care for this bill. But I would also say that I'd be very interested in seeing some of those statistics when that occurs. And like anything, I think we're going to see that there's always an example of when it occurs. However, in a small minority of a small minority of a small minority, we see that. But I think what we should be doing is disseminating information that there are legal avenues, there are U visas, there are T visas, and different things that are available to our immigrants instead of saying that they should be afraid to come forward. Thank you.
The representative touched on something I wanted to ask about was, and I know there are a couple, at least a couple of lawyers on the panel here. What's that?
We can't hear you.
Okay. But the viability, and you kind of commented on it, if you expand the viability of the use of the T visas and the U visas, and for the U visas are applications for those that have suffered mental or physical abuse either here or in their home country, and then the T visas are to protect victims of trafficking, human trafficking, and other violence. And I'm sure there's probably other panels much more expert here that can comment on this today, but the use of those and the viability of those, what can you tell me?
There's a limitation on the U visas and the T visas per year as to how many people can be eligible for those types of visas. But the problem is when the climate in our state is that people are being picked up during adjustment interviews, during the process of becoming a permanent resident. When we have women in California who are going up to law enforcement and reporting crime and are still being picked up and being ripped apart from their families, people aren't going to come out of the shadows. And what we think Massachusetts needs to do is lead on this issue and ensure people that they are safe to go to our institutions and that we are here as a welcoming state.
working with law enforcement authorities to come up with a definition of serious violent felonies. What does that mean?
So we didn't really want to delve into that today, but we have been working with Chief of Police of the City of Chelsea, Brian Keyes, to clearly define what will be considered a serious felony. We've even met with Representative Tucker as well, due to his experience in law enforcement, and to get his expertise on this issue. It is something that myself and Senator Eldridge, we will be providing you with some of the recommendations that law enforcement has provided to us and that they believe would be the best practices to define the section.
Okay, I mean, Mass General laws are pretty explicit on what they consider violent felonies. Most. So that being said, now I know, is your chief here today?
Chief Brian Keyes could not be here today, but we have someone in his place.
No,
My police chief, no, he is not here.
because I did find interesting your comments that the Trust Act that's implemented in your city did not impede that major drug raid that was made recently.
Correct. Yep. And we had the Attorney General of the U.S. and we also had my chief in the State House News clearly state that.
The Attorney General of the United States?
Yes.
Judge
that.
Sessions?
No, I'm sorry, U.S. District.
I was going to say.
Sorry.
Get him up here.
United States District Court, yes.
He's on life support with Trump right now. So that being said, that's very telling. Has the Mass District Attorneys Association taken because I know we have, I know Chief Keyes, I guess, is in the area as a representative, but there is not unanimity among chiefs in Massachusetts, and in fact, the Mass Chiefs of Police Association is neutral.
So we've been working with the president of the Mass Chiefs of Police, and they have been working very closely with Mark Leahy and
He's the executive director.
yeah, Mark Leahy and Brian Keyes. So we've been working closely with them. We're hearing what their concerns are. They proposed amendments to the bill. We will be presenting them to the committee. Like the rep mentioned, there were reps on this panel that we've talked to that have mentioned the fentanyl and heroin issues. And again, we're willing to work with the committee, with law enforcement, to ensure that this is a comprehensive bill and that we're being collaborative with the people that do this work day in and day out.
Any further questions from the members of the committee? Representative Vieira.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just very briefly to follow up on Chairman Moore's question. So you said you were still looking to find out how many communities may be cooperating with ICE and enforcing federal immigration law. Do you have any example of one community that the local law enforcement agency is directly enforcing federal immigration law with ICE in the Commonwealth?
Yes, I do.
Which community?
The city of Marlborough, which I represent, the Marlborough Police Chief has said that when he receives an ICE detainer, he complies with it, and that is a policy that we want to stop.
Okay, so when he receives a detainer, are they going out and doing any primary enforcement of the federal law without the detainers?
I don't know, but that's what he said.
So we have Marlborough. Any others?
Can I add something to this?
Just if you could answer the question first. Any others other than Marlborough in the Commonwealth?
Last week, this House of Representatives voted on making sure that we would never send any prisoners to build the wall. And no one has done that. But we made it very clear that we weren't going to do it. And that's what we're asking that we do with the Safe Communities Act as well. That we make it very clear that we're going to protect our immigrant families, and that we make it very clear that we are not going to use our law enforcement officials to implement immigration law, but that we're going to use them to do what they're supposed to do, and that is keep our communities safe.
As I made very clear in the first, so are there any other communities other than Marlborough?
I'm happy to get you a list, Representative.
I think the committee would do respect. The committee should have a list so that we know the breadth of the issue that we're facing. Thank you.
Thank you, Rob.
Senator Moore.
Senator Eldridge, did he specify which was enforcing us for the detainer law? How would you define it?
Well, basically, and this was in the Metro Daily News, but he was reporting that when he receives an ICE detainer, he complies with it. So he didn't have any restrictions or exceptions. He just said that's the policy.
Any further questions from the committee? Any further questions from the committee?
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. Well done.
Thank you very much.
I've stated it several times, applause only stretches out and pushes out the time for other people that need to testify. Representative Decker. We are making, because of
to the committee. I want to thank you, all members of the committee, and really your staff have been phenomenal and put a long day ahead of them. And to all of those who are here were patiently waiting to be able to testify. I have with me here a Cambridge resident, Emmanuel Sardi, who is the immigrant liaison for the state of Cambridge, who is going to provide testimony.
Good morning, Chairman, committee members. My name is Emmanuel Sardi, and I am the liaison for Immigrant Affairs, opposite the Vice Mayor of the City of Cambridge. Undocumented immigrants have not been reporting crimes based out of fear of deportation. This creates a potential tragic problem that puts everyone at risk, including every person in Massachusetts that could possibly be a victim of crime. In Massachusetts, I know, would not let unfounded fear based on propaganda to prevent those who deserve punishment escape. LA Police Chief Charlie Beck reported that LA had a 25% drop in reports in sexual assaults last year in the local Latino community. Chief Beck does not believe this is because sexual assaults have actually decreased, but is actually due to President Trump's disparaging rhetoric against immigrants and the real fears undocumented immigrants have of being deported. Even after becoming victims of crime, they stay silent to protect themselves and their families. I would love to believe sexual assaults have actually dropped 25% in 1 year, but common sense tells me that this drop is caused by the significant political change the nation transitioned to this January. Crime is not dropping within the immigrant community, reporting is. After listening to over a year of anti-immigrant rhetoric from the presidential campaign, including threats to sanctuary cities across America, I decided to take on my current role in Cambridge. With the support of many, including Representative Decker, immediately after the national election, my phone rang constantly from those within the undocumented immigrant community from different neighborhoods across Massachusetts, all asking questions of who will protect them, who can they turn to, what will they do with their children if someone comes to take them away. As a father of 2 daughters, it pained me greatly that I did not have an easy answer. I heard stories of families selling their few possessions for cash, making plans for what will happen to their children when they are deported. Story after story, all similar to desperate expressions of great fear and anxiety. The government should be serving the weak, the vulnerable, and the poor within our community, not fighting against them. Nonprofits are reporting cases of fraud and extortion, nefarious people threatening undocumented immigrants to pay them or risk being turned over to ICE agents. Reports of fake ICE agents knocking on doors, demanding cash payment in non-sanctuary communities are on the rise. Who do the victims of such extortion turn to in such communities if doing so can cause them to be deported? By ignoring the Safe Communities Act, Massachusetts risks unreported crimes, allowance of extortion and fraud, and most of all, defying what our country stands for. I have taken my time to explain the bipartisan issues that led to the formation of this act, but I want to clarify that this aggregate effect will benefit the safety of all Massachusetts residents, regardless of political stance. Passing this act would not remotely be a win for progressives, rather a win for Massachusetts. Thank you for that.
Thank you. Clarity.
Mr. Chairman, I'm submitting my testimony, and I'm just going to make one plea, is that it's very easy to get caught up in the political spin and the national and state environment of this. I guess I'm asking all of my colleagues to dig deep on this and think about, at the end of the day, the most vulnerable people in our community are women and children. Women are clearly twice as likely to be victims of domestic violence if they are undocumented than natural born, and children's lives are completely ruined and disrupted. And so as we think through both the actual substance of this bill, and then we also separate that from the rhetoric of this bill, I really ask that we always look through the lens of keeping children safe and keeping families safe. And I think there's a lot in this bill that will do that and continue to allow law enforcement to do its job to keep us all safe.
Any questions from members of the board?
This to Senator Brown.
Quick question. How does the city of Cambridge help disseminate that information that there are resources available to victims of crime?
Because the city of Cambridge actually uses its revenue and invests in community outreach workers, and we have a number of programs, both nonprofits and city resources and school resources that receive training and education, but it doesn't just happen. It's about investing our money and our dollars into doing that kind of work and outreach.
Yeah, that's what I'm asking. So that's what I'm asking is how do you do that, and have you seen a corresponding increase in reports as well?
I could not answer that. I could tell you that I've had conversations with members of my police department, members who don't always see the political landscape as I do, who have said that this bill is important to them, that the last thing that they need is for people in our community to feel unsafe and to lose trust in their relationships. We spend a lot of money in community policing in Cambridge. I'm really proud of our police department and our law enforcement in Cambridge. We spend a lot of money and time in building deep, deep relationships throughout the community, and they're not looking at whether or not you're a citizen to develop those relationships. They have said to me, just at the recent parade that we just had, they have said to me, the idea that the trust has been broken between them and members of this community who are undocumented makes all of us more unsafe.
Good morning. Do you have any information on types of crimes that they actually work with IS on?
Can you be more clear?
Certain types of felonies, violent crimes, they just have a blanket policy that they don't work with.
Are you talking about our police department? Our police department follows the law. They follow the law that is laid out. Right now, what they don't do is they don't do the job of immigration enforcement. If you break a law in Cambridge, regardless of your status, you break the law. What they don't do is they won't detain you so that ICE can come pick you up. I mean, unless you have broken the law. If you've broken the law, this is, and I also want to be clear that this rhetoric around sanctuary city versus safe communities, if you break the law, there is no sanctuary. If you hurt somebody else in our community, there is no sanctuary. If you commit a violent crime, there is no sanctuary. This is about ensuring that people who every day are doing their best, living their jobs, great citizens, contributing to our community, making safe choices for themselves and their neighbors, are not being ripped apart from their families and the communities that they've helped build.
Okay, thank you. But the law before us that's being proposed calls for a category of crimes that would allow it.
So
my question is, does the city of Cambridge Police have a category of crimes that they would work with?
I'm sure they do, and I will be happy to have them to actually get it to you. I have a lot of confidence in their ability to ensure that they are clear on the laws that they are carrying out. But I'd be happy to have someone talk to you directly as well.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator.
Well, I would venture to say that you have a lot of citizens on patrol in Cambridge because God forbid you crowd a bicyclist at a stoplight.
We believe in public safety, Representative. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Sheriff Thomas Hodgson. Sheriff Hodgson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. The role of government should be to protect its citizens and legal residents, keep them as safe as possible. It's not to dance around public safety by cherry picking what rules to follow and what agencies to work with. And it's certainly not to put the public at risk to satisfy a political agenda by being with or against whoever's sitting in the Oval Office and their policies. But that's exactly what this bill does. It aims to make Massachusetts a sanctuary state and cuts off lines of communications between local, state, and federal law enforcement. This is a public safety issue, and it is my sworn duty as a sheriff to do everything in my power to keep the citizens in my county and this state as safe as possible. Making Massachusetts a sanctuary state is a step in the wrong direction, a jump backwards before 9/11 to an age when communication and cooperation between law enforcement agencies was not a priority. So let's just take a look beyond the legal jargon and look at this bill for what it is. A politically motivated piece of legislation that will block partnerships with federal law enforcement agencies and make it easier for criminal illegal immigrants to return to our neighborhoods instead of their home countries. And yes, I use the term sanctuary state freely in this testimony because that would be the result of this if this bill passes. A sanctuary community is one that has specific policies designed to limit and hinder federal law immigration enforcement. And that's exactly what this bill does. Making Massachusetts a sanctuary state restricts our relationship with ICE. Why in the world should we work with less law enforcement agencies? Why should we share less information? Not only deputy sheriffs, but state troopers and local cops assigned to full-time to federal task forces such as the FBI Gang Task Force, the FBI Terrorism Task Force, DEA Drug Task Force, ATF. Why is ICE cherry-picked as the one federal enforcement agency we can't partner with? Particularly given the escalating terrorist attacks, human and sex trafficking, gang violence, and drug smuggling that's going on in Massachusetts and across this country. The state of Massachusetts can't opt out of FCC regulation. We can't ignore the FTC, but we're supposed to turn a blind eye to ICE? It makes no sense. Also, this bill states that local law enforcement and corrections teams cannot share release dates for criminal illegal immigrants with ICE unless the person committed a serious violent felony. Sure, everyone thinks ICE should know if an illegal convicted murderer or big-time drug dealer is going to be released on such and such a day. Those are the easy ones. Here are some of the offenses we would be barred from sharing with ICE when inmates are going to be released: possession of child pornography, or OUI, only after your 5th offense. How about assault and battery on a child, aggravated assault on a pregnant woman, assault with a dangerous weapon, welfare and food stamp fraud, subsequent possession of heroin, and enticement of a child for prostitution or human trafficking. And there are plenty more. In conclusion, by restricting communication and cooperation between all levels of law enforcement, this bill trades the safety and security of our citizens and legal residents for the comfort and concealment of criminal illegal immigrants. I respectfully request that this committee stand with law enforcement in our efforts to protect the citizens and legal residents from criminal illegal immigrants by voting unfavorably on House Bill 3269 and Senate Bill 1305. I thank you for your time and for the opportunity to present to the committee.
Sheriff, just to clarify, you're here on your own behalf, and that the Mass Sheriff's Association is not taking a stance on this legislation. Is that correct?
That's correct, Mr. Sheriff. We're not taking a stand.
Any questions from the committee? Representative Tucker.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Sheriff, in your opening comments, you seem to emphasize the fact that your sworn duty is to keep citizens safe, to protect citizens. We've heard a number of...
legal residents.
Let me finish.
I'm sorry.
We've heard a number of stories where women, victims of domestic violence, I know in my neighboring city there have been a number of street robberies of people who may not have documented status. I'm just curious your thoughts on what is law enforcement's duty to those who are not citizens. In fact, should we have a sworn duty depending on anybody's documented status, or are you actually making a distinction?
Well, that's a great question, and one that I can answer personally. We in New Bedford, for example, have illegals that have been working at fish houses for years and years. We got information that there were American individuals, criminals, who were waiting because they knew that the illegals got paid on Fridays in cash, who were waiting for them when they came up certain areas in and around the fish houses and were robbing them. I sent my officers down there to try to identify who these perpetrators were and effective arrest them and get that. So, look, we're not going to tolerate. Your point is that by having more people here illegally, we have more crimes. Whether they're victims or whether illegals are committing them, we're exposing our communities to more crime by illegals being here and having these perpetrators going after them as well. But we do believe that no crime should be happening in the community. We'll do everything we can in those instances where we find it to root out these perpetrators who are doing it regardless of the situation. Crime can't, our job is to suppress them. And by the way, if I could just add, there was mentioned earlier that there was, in previous testimony, that there was a woman who was arrested. She was picked up on her way to review, I can't remember, I think you brought it up, Senator, that she was just going to review her green card or something, and she was arrested. I forget what state it said it was. I believe it was Texas. But the truth of the matter is that woman had been deported 4 times and she had a criminal record. So it wasn't she was just simply going there. And that's often when we hear people testifying that people are just being picked up like this, they're not talking about the whole story. There's more to it. And I know for a fact that ICE is prioritizing, as the President has said, the criminal and illegal aliens. We've got serious problems with criminals in our communities we need to deal with.
Any questions? Representative.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Sheriff, just a couple of very quick questions. I asked this and I'm wondering, is it a crime, and if so, what crime is being committed by somebody being in the United States, either who has passed their visa requirements or entered the country without going through immigration?
It's a violation of immigration law to overstay your visa. It's a violation of immigration law. If you're here on legal status, but you violate your contract by committing crimes, that automatically permanent legal resident doesn't mean permanent. If you violate the contract, if you commit a crime, or you violate some other part of that contract, you're subject to being deported. And that's always been, and as well the, of course, the criminal situation when you came here illegally. You have a removal order on you, but you haven't been caught yet. That removal order amounts to a felony. So the probable cause issue is resolved.
Well, that's my next question is, we heard a lot about probable cause. And does an ICE detainer constitute, or is it backed up somehow by probable cause?
Always has been. And the fact of the matter is, what ICE has done because of this sort of pushback is they are now not only issuing the detainers, but they're also issuing warrants with those detainers to avoid any question that continues to be raised and sort of eliminate this back and forth. And if I may, just on the point that this is somehow working against people in the communities who are here illegally and not reporting crimes and so forth. I just want to share with you something that's very important for this community to understand. There was a case about a month and a half ago that happened in Tacoma, Washington. Tacoma, Washington is a sanctuary state. Trooper gets a call to go to an accident scene, arrives at the scene, runs both driver's licenses. The first driver's license comes back, person has committed a serious, convicted of a serious criminal offense, deported twice, contact ICE. The trooper got on the phone at the accident scene, called ICE and said, listen, I just did this regular accident scene, here's what I got. And they said, we'll be right there. They arrested the individual, took him into ICE custody. The next day, the trooper went to work. That trooper was approached by a supervisor and told, you are under investigation for contacting ICE. Now, this trooper had one of two choices when he got that call. The first was, when that printout came out, it said contact ICE, ignore it and provide harbor and concealment for that individual to go off after the accident was investigated, which is a felony in federal law up to 5 years for him. Or, uphold his oath and his promise to the people in his community and enforce the law and face disciplinary action. That's what this is doing to law enforcement in this country and will do to the law enforcement community in Massachusetts. If you start restricting us from being able to enforce these laws and uphold our oath, and we cannot do that. And frankly, I will not do that. I will not violate federal law. There's a supremacy clause that's very clear. Constitutionally, we cannot do this. And I hope that this committee will honor the federal law and allow us to do what we promised the people we would do. And I think all of you promised as well, and I know you feel the same way I do. Make sure that they're going to be safe.
Senator Jane Diaz.
Sheriff, a question or two back, you suggested that allowing undocumented immigrants to live among us is causing more crime in our communities. I'm wondering if you have any evidence to substantiate that claim.
I think I just gave you some. I just gave the examples of the individuals that are being targeted by Americans. Let me give you another one. Which many people
Let me clarify. What I'm looking for is statistical information and evidence rather than anecdotal.
First of all, if you don't want to know the actual cases and you want to hear the statistics, I don't have those statistics in front of me, but I can give you something that's important for you to understand about what, if I may, to just understand.
It's my prerogative as a member of this committee to ask the questions that I think are most relevant.
Fair enough.
If you do have that kind of statistical information, I would ask you
We'll get
for
it.
it.
We will get that.
I have one follow-up question.
Absolutely.
Sheriff, have you committed any civil infractions?
With regards to
Any?
me personally,
Yes.
well, is this a personal, have I sped, have I gone over the speed limit, is that what you're asking?
Anything that falls under that category of
I'm
civil
sure I've gone over
infraction?
the speed limit in my lifetime.
Thank you.
And your point?
I think that.
And probably everybody in this room has probably done that at one time or another, I'm not sure what your point is.
I would agree with that.
Your point?
But you're here making the point that we should not cherry pick which laws we take seriously and which laws we enforce. So I'm just asking the question for context.
Well, there's consequences. If I'm going speeding, there are consequences for it, much like there would be for the very same analogy that you're giving. I'm not suggesting that I should have less consequences than anyone else.
Well, I was suggesting that either. Thank you.
Vice Chair Sylvia.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Sheriff, for coming here today and testifying. I know that you're surrounded by lots of folks who are not in the same opinion as you are.
I'm eating at my dining room table with my 12 brothers and sisters.
I'm very familiar with your facility in Bristol County, as you know. I was wondering how many individuals are being held right now federally for ICE detainer in Bristol County.
Well, as you know, Representative, I built an immigration detention facility without any statement, and we've been holding detainees for about 8 years. Currently, our numbers are about 140 to 160. We can't go up as high as G10, which we have.
Now, they're in that facility right now, and where do they go from there? Will there be a hearing in New Bedford, or what will that take place?
No, they will have, their hearing will happen in Boston, or it'll be done in the video, but more often than not, they go to the federal court in Boston, and they have a immigration hearing. And once the hearings are over, the judge makes the determination as to whether or not they should be deported or not.
The only thing I want to add to this is I really confused myself over the concerns around felonies and what felonies should be observed under this proposed legislation. I don't know how, I was a police officer for 22 years, and I always knew a felony to be a crime that was punishable by imprisonment over 2.5 years. Any crime punishable for 2.5 years is a felony. And I wouldn't know how to wrap my arms around anything else to say that this is one that should be reported. This is not one that should go to ICE. If you're reading pornography, that shouldn't go to ICE. But if you're the 7, 8 to 15-year-olds, it should go to ICE. I'm not sure how that goes.
If I may, I think that's a great point. And then would you then now extend whatever considerations that you may in forgiving people of certain laws for certain consequences? The same thing for vaccinators based on this issue.
It's confusing. Again, thank you, Sheriff, for your testimony.
Representative Walsh.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Sheriff, 2 quick questions. One, you said you've had a detaining program for 8 years. Could you tell me what percentage of those who have been detained are eventually deported, and those where the found the case is not relevant? And the second question is, are you the only county that is doing that?
Actually, we're not. I'm the only one that built the detention facility independent of the state. I'm going to give you an approximate, which would be about 80% on the deportations. And the other sheriff's offices that are doing immigration detention are Plymouth and Bristol. And since 2011, just as a point of information, we've generated $173 million that has gone into the general fund here in the county.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, thank you. I was really interested in the revenue part of this. What I was curious is when an individual is detained, and following up on Vice Chairman's question on what the process is, what is the length of stay, and then ultimately what the percentages are, those that are found not having the cause and those that need deportation.
Sure, again, I'm estimating about 80%, but it would be on average, I'd say anywhere from 4 to 6 months before they go through the process and ultimately into place. Thank you.
You've generated, Sheriff, a couple questions in my mind. Number one, how did you pay for that detention facility? And number two, can you expand on this $173 million in revenue?
Oh, sure. As far as the payment on the facility goes, we actually, we were involved in ICE transportation, we're paid for ICE transportation. We didn't, at the time, the state wasn't taking the money, so we reinvested it. In fact, I had a phase 2 ready to go, but the state decided to take the revenues from the federal revenues from the money we generate. So it is, as far as the $173 million goes, that's the total amount of money that was brought in per day. We paid $99 per day per detainee for housing these individuals. So between 2011 and today, between the three sheriffs, we generated $173 million in federal dollars.
And that money is turned into the general fund?
Yes, it is. Yeah.
And do you only take detainees from Massachusetts, or?
No, we have some. We have some detainees that come from Rhode Island as well.
Warren and Senator Brown.
Sheriff, the 160, how many of them detained actually will get brought back?
Back to their country. I'm estimating, Senator, I don't know the exact percentage, but I think it's about 80%.
Senator Brown.
I wanted to pick up on your reference to the supremacy clause and just to try to get your legal analysis here. You seem to call in question the legality of this bill, the policy of this bill. What's your legal analysis? Or did I hear you right? Or
My understanding, Senator, is that in talking with legal counsel, that and if you look at the case that happened in New York, the appellate court, it clearly states that no state can in and of itself frustrate the federal authority, the federal government in relation to ICE, the SEC, these established federal authorities by creating a divisiveness between the public entities. So essentially, it says that federal law supersedes state law in relation to, for example, the FCC. All those laws apply across the board for every state. It's not something, according to the appellate court, that you can, and I'm not a lawyer, I'm simply just repeating back to you what our legal analysis has been in looking at those cases.
okay, I think that's incorrect in the sense that this law doesn't command. This law says you're not going to tell local authorities they won't get involved in federal enforcement. We don't do that on any other, on most other kinds of federal law, or let me say that differently. On many other kinds, obviously we get involved in narcotics law and so forth. There's lots of places we do part, but there's lots of places we don't. We brought up one of them, which is the FCC. Amusingly, we've had legislation people who are asking people to start enforcing the FCC law because the FCC people, but we don't do that. So there's like it's a choice that the state has to get involved in enforcement of federal law. And the federal government does not have the power to order states to get involved in a particular effort, whether it's copyright law or the federal communications law, all kinds of things will never touch an enforcement state. And what this law says is immigration should be one of those.
Well, no, I agree with you, Senator. That is correct. That is what this says. But the problem is when you start to see, when your law starts to suggest that we cannot enforce when somebody is in our custody and the potential for that person to be intercepted by ICE at the time based on a public safety need, is restricting us from being able to operate the device. We're told we can't pass it in regional device. And clearly in 1573 it says that the state cannot tell law enforcement that they cannot cooperate with.
Well, that law specifically does not carves out and says you may comply with 1370. That's what this says. This does not violate 1370.
Right, except in the instances where I just named several crimes that we're barred from sharing information, or barred from holding individuals, such as the child pornography, the assault, and so on.
Picking up on a laundry list of crimes, everybody's in agreement that that laundry list needs to be trimmed. But
yeah, I think we agree on that point. So.
Representative Meridian.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Sheriff, for coming and presenting today. I don't know if you're aware of the incident just yesterday in Auburn, Massachusetts, but if you're not, I'll just tell you it's being reported that an illegal immigrant actually smashed into a family of 4 in a vehicle, injuring a mother, and reportedly had a .23 alcohol THC, admitted to entering the U.S. illegally through Mexico, the El Salvador, and no driver's license. And just given what's been said from my colleagues earlier, that if you hurt someone, you get no sanctuary, and the most vulnerable, which I would argue would be this mother who has the potential of a broken neck. And then given my question from before about what would constitute a serious violent felony and the ambiguities that kind of came from that, in your professional capacity, would you consider operating under the influence, operating a motor vehicle negligently and unlicensed operation of a motor vehicle as serious violent felonies in this situation?
Absolutely. And you merely need to talk to the 3 people in Milford, Massachusetts. Matthew Denise, sadly, was one of those legitimate as well. The brothers, Revere, and others. This is going on all over the country. And these are people who would still be here pursuing their dreams, but for the fact that somebody decided to come into the country and violate the law. And so that's as simple as I think we can get on this issue. And let's keep in mind too, which is very important to understand on sanctuary cities, we know, and I think any one of us who might have nefarious ideas about plotting and planning, for example, the Boston Marathon bombing or some other incident. We're seeing more and more. We just saw what happened in Washington, D.C. today. 2 police officers run over. There are people who will seek sanctuary in these areas where they know they're less likely to be identified to plot and plan a catastrophic event. That's common sense. And we know that that's what they do. Criminals don't go to places where there's light, noise, and a lot of people around. They look for places where they can lay low and carry out the thought they have to commit a crime against innocent people. We see it in communities where we see drug activity and so forth. We know this in law enforcement. I've been doing this for 20 years, and I've been involved in immigration reform for 20 years, going back to the days of Barney Fight and Henry Hyde. We got a bill from the House. Never made it consent because of politics in Washington. That's another story. I'm as frustrated as anybody about this. But the answer is not. We all want immigrants. This is the question about immigrants. It's not about immigrants being afraid. It's about illegal immigrants being afraid to come forward. Much like it would be for any bank robber, any tax evader deciding they're going to run to the police station and tell them that somebody broke into a car next to their home because they're worried that they're going to get caught. That's no surprise. Everybody's been war in this country for years. And as far as separating families go, let me just say this. You can accuse me for 20 years of separating families. I'm the sheriff of the county where I have people in my jail every single day who are separated from their families. And you can blame me, and you can blame our system. But the reality is those things are in place to protect the public. It's the person who made the bad decision to come there that is the issue. Let's stop redirecting it to the places where we have systems in place to preserve our democracy and protect the legal residents and citizens of our community.
if that's hissing I hear over here, it's incredibly inappropriate. Each panel here, no matter their position, is to be treated with respect. And if I continue to hear that, we'll find out who's doing it, and you can stand outside. And that goes for either side of this debate. You're undercutting your argument. The representative points out the complexity in this, because each of the counts, criminal counts he just articulated, and I'm unaware of that accident, that event back in Worcester County, but standing alone, each of those charges without further aggravating circumstances are misdemeanors, which again complicates